Victoria Pearson, but you can call me V, and it is very nearly my daughter's 20th birthday. We celebrated the other day because she actually has an exam on her birthday, and so I thought I would show you guys how to make a super simple Victoria sponge cake, because that is the most requested cake in my household. Stick around until the end of the video and I will show you the half finished art and crafts projects that I showed you last week. I've finished some of them now, and so I'll give you a quick peep at them. So preheat your oven to 190, gas mark and fan ovens are in the description, and then grease 2 tins that are about 20 centimetre sandwich tins. I've only got one, so I'm going to have to just do them in batches. Grab yourself some self-raising flour and some scales. Make sure that they're set to 0 before you start, and you're going to weigh out 200 grams of self-raising flour. Reset your scale to 0 and then grab yourself some caster sugar, and we're going to measure out 200 grams of that as well. You can just add it in with the flour because step 1 is to mix those two together anyway. Then you're going to grab yourself 4 eggs, the fresher the better, and then we're going to need 200 grams of butter. This one came in a 200 gram packet, but I didn't realise at first and started measuring it all out, cutting smaller and smaller pieces off and thinking, there's not much butter left in this packet. Is it a 250 gram packet or something like that? I thought it was a 500, and then I looked at it and realised it was a 200, and I just wasted all of my time. Oh my gosh. I've just been very carefully measuring out little bits of butter so I don't go over 200 grams, thinking this has nearly run out, that's weird. And then I discover it's a 200 gram packet of butter. Oh. Onward and upward then, I suppose. So next I get my eggs and crack 4 of them into a separate bowl, or in my case jug, than the dry ingredients, because we need to beat these eggs up first. So we're going to crack all 4 in, and then we're going to take a fork and just scramble them up and get as much air into them as we can until they're a little bit paler, a little bit yellower and kind of bubbly. You could probably do that a lot quicker if you had like a hand mixer or a kitchen stand mixer, something like that. But you can just do it by hand with a fork, because I haven't got a mixer. Once that is all bubbled up and pale yellow, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of milk. I am using semi-skimmed milk, but you can use full fat milk if you want to. I don't think it really makes much difference. I've never tried making this cake with plant milk or vegan egg substitutes, so I don't know how that would work out. But if you try it and it works out well, do let me know. At this point, I realised I'd forgotten to add my baking powder. You need a teaspoon of that into the dry ingredients, so into your sugar and flour mix. This next part is messy, but it is fun to do with kids, and especially if they like getting messy, just make sure you wash their hands first. So you're going to chop your butter into smaller pieces to make it easier to work with, put it into your dry powders mix, and then you're going to get in there with your hands and start rubbing the fat into the flour sugar mix. So you're sort of lifting it and rubbing it between your fingers and letting it fall back into the bowl. I'm going to do this for quite some time until it becomes a kind of breadcrumby sort of substance. It shouldn't at any point be sort of sticking to your hands too much. If it is, just rub it off into the bowl and grab more of the dry stuff. But as you lift it and sprinkle it through your hands, you're adding lots of air in at the same time as you are sticking all of your ingredients together and mixing them all together. And that's going to result in a much lighter and fluffier and more moist cake. Once your mixture has become crumbly breadcrumbs, it's time to start very slowly incorporating the egg. At this point, you really don't want to use your fingers. It is time to get a spoon involved. We're just slowly folding that in until it is completely mixed. Beat your mixture together as hard as you can. This stage is much, much easier if you do have a stand mixer, but I do not, so it takes a long time and kind of hurts my shoulder. But what you're trying to do is beat it as hard as you can and lift the mixture as you're beating it, because the idea of what you're doing is to try and firstly remove all lumps, but also get as much air as you can into the cake mix. Once your cake is all mixed up, you just divide it equally between your cake tins. You don't have to be really, really precise, especially if you've greased them well, because they are going to sort of rise and spread to fill your tin anyway. Work them in a preheated oven for about 20 minutes or until a skewer inserted in them comes out clean, and then leave them to cool on a cooling rack until they are completely cold.
That stage is so important because if you try and put icing or jam or anything like that in these cakes when they're hot out of the oven like this, everything's just going to melt everywhere. And if you leave them in the tins instead of taking them out onto a cooling rack, they are going to continue to cook. When you have got them completely cool, you want to spread a layer of strawberry jam in the middle. If you really hate strawberry jam, you could do a different flavour, but strawberry is the classic. This is going to give you a little crumb coat if you want to put buttercream or something in it, but it is totally fine to just leave them as jam and sandwich them together. At this point, dust it with a little bit of icing sugar on top and call it done. However, I wanted this to be a bit of a richer cake because it was for a birthday, and so I decided on the last second to mix up some buttercream. Unfortunately, as you saw, I only had 200 grams of butter and I used it all for the cake, and so I made my buttercream with margarine, and I don't think anybody noticed. I didn't measure out a single thing for that, I'm afraid. I just put a dollop of margarine into a little bowl with some sugar, caster sugar, and just mixed it up until it was a pale yellow and was a bit bigger, and it tasted nice. And that is what I used to ice the top of the cake as well. Although my daughter probably would have preferred it if I just dusted it with icing sugar. She said it was a little bit rich for her, but my husband really liked the richness of it. And you can't please everybody. Unfortunately, I wish I had pleased my daughter with it because it was her birthday cake, but she still enjoyed the cake even with the buttercream icing on it. If you wanted to, you could put whipped cream and sliced strawberries in the centre and then a little bit of dusting of icing sugar on top, or you could ice the cake completely. If you're going to do that, I would recommend putting a layer of jam down as a crumb coat before adding your fondant or icing or marzipan just to help it stick. Ta-da! The cake might not look the most aesthetic because I did decide not to try and ice the sides. I was running quite low on time and I didn't want to ruin it, but it tasted ever so good and it looked super cute with the candles on, as I'm sure you will agree.
As I said, that cake is super adaptable. You can put all sorts of fillings inside it. You can put all sorts of things on top of it, decorate it however you want. And it is just a really good basis for a lot of different type of cakes. So I hope that you found it easy enough to follow. Now, those of you that watched last week, you may have seen that I had some half-finished arts and crafts projects on the go. One of those things was my daughter's birthday present. She asked me to make her a calcifer out of clay for her to use as a little trinket box. This was the reference picture that I used, and that is how it turned out. Yeah, it does look a little bit cursed, but hey, that's how you know that it's homemade. I also showed you the beginnings of the wombat that I was crocheting, and I've finished that now. And I actually think for my first time crocheting ever, this has came out really, really well. It's got his little tail and his little leg nubbins. The pattern that I had chosen did have little feet on the legs, but I think it looks cuter without them, and also they looked really complicated. But I am very, very pleased with how my first and probably last ever crochet project came out. Cry count overall 4 for the whole project, which I've heard is quite good for a beginning crochet project, especially one that includes a fake magic circle. So apparently that's really good. I'm pleased with how it turned out anyway, and I think my friend would have liked it. Join me on Monday for my next vlog, where I think we're doing a witchy one next week. We're going to be talking about daily gratitude as a witchcraft practice, and also the health benefits to daily gratitude as well. But if you can't wait until then to see me again, I will be here every single morning in your shorts, taking a great big deep breath, letting you know what I'm grateful for. Sometimes I'm letting you know what's challenging me that day. And I will also be here on Witchy Wednesday for an intuitive tarot card read as well. You can book me for a private reading if you want to through my Ko-fi, and I will put the link of that in the description. So like and subscribe, or don't, I'm not your mum, but either way, you have yourself a magical week.